Hello, this is Sergio Morero, and we are here with RBL1 Live. Today we have a guest, Jenny Friedman. She is co-founder and partner at Supernode Ventures. She is an alumni of Goldman Sachs, MBA from Columbia Business School, also graduate of Wharton University of Pennsylvania, and excited to have her today to share her story as we dive into her background in creating Supernode and the current events. So thank you for joining us today, Jenny.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I know I gave a little bit of a background, and for those watching, I know it is Blackout Tuesday, and we're going to dive in a little bit more into the current events. But before we do, Jenny, can you share a little bit more about Supernode?
Happy to. So Supernode is a pre-seed and seed. So basically pre-series A fund. We're generalists. We invest, our portfolio is about around 20 companies to date. Our average check size is about 100K. We've invested, majority of our investments have been in New York, although we've had a couple out west in Boston. We've actually expanded into some emerging markets. We have 3 in LATAM and 1 in Nigeria now, but mostly software first. And yeah, looking totally across the spectrum in terms of generalists here in New York.
Great. And I know you, and so you have about 20 companies, 100K, or like agnostic across the board. What are I know from checking out the Supernode story and speaking to some of your former colleagues, the uniqueness of Supernode as a network hub. Can you talk a little bit about what's different about what you're building or have built?
Yeah, no, for sure. So if you, my co-founder, Laurel Toby, so she's a master networker, and I like to think that I'm pretty good at networking too, but she's fantastic. So her background was in operating. She had a business called Media Bistro. Basically, she's very hands-on on the media side, very hands-on on operating, and she created this super network, this node of founders, entrepreneurs, journalists from her time as a business journalist, and then operators when she was building her company. And she basically, what her company was it was LinkedIn sort of for the media community. So taking everything and like creating these live events from anyone in the industry, creating synergies just generally. And then she did that and then she sort of paralleled that into Supernode in the ways that we host events now. So we'll have like our founder, for example, let's say it's a prop tech founder, and then we'll have several investors that are interested in the space, and then thought leaders, and then media and press that are interested in writing about this particular topic and founder. So we were very big on events. Obviously, it's been very hard. Like, took me 20 minutes even to say that because it's been so long since we've actually been able to host anything. But we do try to create this network where entrepreneurs have, get access to later stage investors and media. And then my background is also born and raised in New York City, so I've been here my whole life. My family, extended family, all of my, professional, personal relationships are really here. And then as a part of another initiative that we do is my partner has these serial breakfast entrepreneurs, and some of the most successful founders that you like, Jeremy, Vandela, there's so many interesting people that have come to her breakfast when they were starting out their companies, just for advice and just to talk to other founders that were starting out their companies as a breakfast series. And she's been doing that for about 10 years now. And a lot of great has come out of it. So we really work hard to be the center of a lot of what the ecosystem is here in New York, and trying to give as many opportunities to people as possible.
And how, especially with COVID and the current time of social distancing, how have you all adapted?
It's been hard because we're extroverted. We want to be out there. We want to help. Part of our job, like, I know everyone makes fun of VCs, but part of our job is really the fulfilling part is knowing that you actually can make a difference for these young entrepreneurs. And it's 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 not the same on Zoom. It's not the same by, you can always continue to connect people, obviously online, but we've been very limited as to how much we can really make connections, which it's been difficult.
And for you all, when you host these events and activities, do they center around? Do you center around the expert, the media expert, or
It
do you
depends.
center around the startup or certain industries? How does it usually take place?
It depends. So it depends on the sector and the area. So if we'll have, like if we're doing something on telemedicine, or if we're doing something on something in healthcare, we'll typically will structure it around our portfolio company. That way that it's obviously something that's relevant to us, because we went out there to go find this entrepreneur, and we're excited about what they're building and their passion. So we have to be excited about the space as it is. Um, and then from there, we think that we are investing in disruptive trends and trends that are relevant. So yeah, by hosting these events, they're traditionally sort of on track with what people are interested in learning about, reading about, writing about.
And to shift a little bit, can you share a little bit more of, you talked about helping founders, especially in this time. We talked about, I kind of prefaced in the beginning with Blackout Tuesday. A lot of right now it's a tense time in America, a unique time, and calling out, actually, just getting it out there. Part of what we wanted to do, is open dialogue, right? Promote dialogue. It doesn't have to only be among the Black community, that we stand with the Black community and talk. And I wanted to, openly talk about that. So thank you, Jenny, for being open to engage in that. But can you share a little bit more about, how have you seen some of this unfold even in the last couple of days? I know we were talking about it before we started today.
Yeah, honestly, it's been absolute havoc. I would say the only good thing that's actually come out of this, and I think it must have been 6 years ago that I started my career in venture capital. Before I was in tech I've been in tech VC, I would say, for about 6 to 7 years. Before that, I was in finance, but regardless, I've never seen something incite change or disruption in an industry the way that what's going on right now is changing the way that the conversations are just being had. And just to go back on the whole point of where are we in terms of disruption and change, and how are we going to be looking at things moving forward? I think it all starts at the top of the funnel, right? So where are, how are underrepresented people going to get access to venture capitalists and get access to capital, get access to the incubators and to the accelerators and to Y Combinator, all these things all these different, platforms that are supposed to help help operators, really, really excel. And I think that, it was like, for example, I was talking to my former boss at ENIAC Ventures earlier today, and he signed up for something called SuperPeer. It's basically you log in and you ask him a bunch of questions, and it's like, and I know that some people are not interested in the word mentorship. They think it's, pedantic or whatnot. But basically, his entire calendar through August has been filled through just his one tweet saying that he's interested in helping, giving mentorship and being helpful, to underrepresented, to minority founders. And I mean, I love that firm so much. They're amazing. But there's this one tweet, and I think that I don't know what the innate thought is that they wouldn't already have access to founders, but platforms similar to SuperPeer, and ones that are giving, investors a chance to have some sort of closer connection other than just a cold email is very helpful.
No,
But yeah.
No, I was going to say that's a great example, and I definitely see it. Like people are upset. I don't think this is definitely not the first time. Yeah, it's more of a breaking point, and then at the same time we all been cooped up. So a combination of things just erupting, but it's it being important to examine, like you're saying, like how it can it, like how can we address this specifically in venture. So that is, that's a good example of how someone makes themselves more accessible. Can you share a little bit more of I mean, we can point to how the lower percentage that underrepresented founders get, founders of color, black, the black community gets a smaller portion of venture capital. We can point to that, but what are other ways that you've seen this you talk about systemic racism like may appear in venture?
So the thing is that you just mentioned people are upset. People are upset, and I think that they are upset and are actually the conversation is starting now. I don't think that the conversation has happened, and this is a conversation that has needed to be had. This is similar to when there were fewer there. Now there are women who code and women who are engineers, and just my former boss, also his wife, Rashmi Johnny, she started Girls Who Code, which includes now globally all of these women that are now going through the process of learning how to code. Um, and then going into the workforce and actually making a difference as an engineer. And I think that was inspired by the Me Too movement, and there's been a lot of progressive change, but before however many, like in the past 6 or 7 years, there weren't really women engineers. There weren't really, I would say there's the GPs, women GPs at funds is probably 10% of what it is now. So things are changing, but I think that right now it's very soon to say exactly what is going to come out of this movement right to date. But I know that people are talking about it. Different funds are talking about, should we change a percentage? Should we have a minimum percentage of how much we need to allocate to X types of founders? Or everyone's trying to strategize right now. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but the least I can say is that I'm glad that the conversations are being had, because this is the first time in venture that I've heard it.
That's great. That's absolutely. Do you all have a specific mandate or focus toward, I mean, right now in terms of racism, we're talking about the Black community, but do you have any strategies of diversity around any particular underrepresented segments?
So we personally don't, but I sometimes feel like a fool when I speak on panels and speak to founders. I genuinely, and I'm not gonna say favorites, but I have portfolio companies that I think are absolutely gonna. There's one portfolio company that we have, that the two lead investors, the last round, are gonna get tattoos once this becomes a unicorn, a billion-dollar company. And that is a one woman founder, and we're like, we as GPs, Laurel and I, like we definitely don't come to the table thinking, this white dude is going to be more impressive than an African American woman. We are not inclined to think that way, and we know that it exists out there. We just don't personally have that view. So like if you look at our portfolio, it's from the get-go, it's been half female founders, if not more, and there's no bias for us. There's no bias. That said, you look at the statistics and you see less than 3% of women that are female-founded companies, which is ridiculous and it's crazy. But I personally haven't witnessed it from a fund perspective. But that said, of course, it exists.
And how about in terms of founders of color? Do you have like statistics around that?
No, honestly, generally, we don't discriminate in any shape
Oh,
or
not
form.
discriminate, but in terms of like
We don't have a
X,
mandate. I would say that we fill a mandate without having to fill a mandate. We don't have one in
Okay.
our LPA, but we honestly don't need one because we're very we just honestly don't look at companies. We're looking for the best talent.
Yeah. And as you're it is I know something, looking at some firms, some impact firms, you think about Caper Capital or Acumen Fund. Sometimes they'll measure not in the beginning but at the end. Do you guys it's do you guys measure at ex ante, like afterwards?
We actually don't, but I'm in a women's VC WhatsApp group right now. Everyone is talking about, like, literally just 5 minutes before we came on, posting statistics, and I can't tell if people would want that or find it to be like condescending. I don't know what people would think of it, but we're having the conversation. Should we post it as if it's like a nutrition chart and
Hmm.
say, like, this is what we did this year, and like we're putting it out there. I mean,
Yeah,
we're proud of what we're doing, and we're happy for
absolutely.
it. But I don't know. We're the best part again is honestly that the conversations are really being had across funds, across managers, across, whether it's like females founders fund that just invests in a female founder, BBG. There's funds that, again, like I said, in the Me Too movement, that have emerged in the past 10 years as a result of women empowerment and seeing women as real entrepreneurs. There was an article that came out literally yesterday saying that women hedge fund managers are outperforming males for this entire year, which is crazy. Um, just based on, I don't know actually qualitatively what it's based on, but it's just, I think that I'm glad the conversations are happening right now.
Yep. Yeah, and no, that's great. It's where it starts, right? It's like it being comfortable having those conversations, putting the information out there. Because I think that's the intent is some people don't know, and then we measure it and just put it out there. It just it at least engages dialogue to say, oh wait, I didn't know that we might have had no XYZ, right? Like we didn't have broader representation around people of color or the Black community, Latino, Latinx community, women, right? It's like you don't know sometimes until you measure. So,
Totally.
um,
And I think that it will be interesting to see the funds, or just generally the people, like, just because this movement is trending right now. Um, I hope I hope that that's not why people are participating in social media and participating on LinkedIn and having their funds put up like a one liner.
yeah,
I really do feel like this is a really powerful time. I think that people are going to, it's really going to be about, what are you going to do after you put up that punchline, um,
absolutely.
and how is the top funnel going to change?
Yeah, and I think that I mean that's the key. What's the action afterwards? After we really all release our statements, which is nice. The question is like, what's the action that backs up the statements, so that this doesn't become a repeated story. Diving in a little bit, and back to you talked about half your fund, is talk about female founders specifically. You and your partner are both, women GPs, running a fund. Can you share a little bit of the story on how you all met each other and ended up starting a fund?
Yes, for sure. So my partner was, as I said, she was on the operating side. I was more on the finance side. So she basically just super interested in tech. She sold her company. She basically bootstrapped it from zero to mid 20 millions, and kept over 65% of it. And she was a woman pioneering this sort of startup mentality on the East Coast, in the early 2000s. So she sold her business, and then um, she basically started angel investing and she has a portfolio of her angel investments, about 25 investments, I want to say. And then in addition to that, she also bought a huge loft in Flatiron where she just specifically to host events for anyone in the ecosystem, and make them like cater to particular industries and founders, but she bought this loft particularly for her job, which became sort of her baby, as she calls it, since she didn't have kids. Anyway, I was at ENIAC Ventures, fantastic fund here in New York and also in SF. I had previously been at Goldman Sachs, and then I was at Mini Bar Delivery doing it's basically seamless for alcohol if you hadn't heard of it. Learned a lot about e-commerce, logistics, and marketplaces. Super interesting. And they're actually crushing it right now in COVID. Not that anyone even remembers what COVID is, but they're a fantastic company. And we went from there to Columbia Business School, and then went to ENIAC Ventures, and basically they were expanding operations at ENIAC in SF. And at the time, I was trying to stay in New York. I went to an networking event, just to see what was up. Howard Morgan was speaking. Started first round, and there was a huge. It was just so many people that I just longed for those times when you could just go to an event and meet people. That just doesn't happen anymore. But I was sitting next to some guy, and he asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm just, with a fund, but looking for something permanent here in New York. And he said, you should meet this woman, Laurel. She's had a number of angel investments. She's looking to raise a fund of committed capital, and you guys should meet. So we met, drafted an agreement, checked each other's references with other people in the ecosystem, and I want to say like 2.5 weeks later, and this is like not really, I would say I'm way more risk averse than this. And this is more a her thing than a me thing to do. But we hit it off, and it will be 3 years in the fall. I have 2.5 years now. But it's been fantastic, and we have a great thing going, and completely different. We come from different places, different generations, completely different, in terms of the skill sets that we bring, but we complement each other very well, and it's been great.
Can you talk a little bit about what made you believe you were a good match, right? Like, what are those complementing skill sets as some people are looking to, launch their own funds, and they're looking for a partner? What from the get-go, did you say, hey, like, did you know that you were both talking about being partners with each other, or was it more of a project wait and see until you see if there's chemistry there? How did it unfold?
It's definitely I'm looking for a partner. I'm looking for a full-time VC thing. Let's do this. Like, there was no middle ground. But I think that it's very, very helpful. And I think that all managers and investors, I think alike, would just agree. And founders too, when they're looking for capital, like, you really want someone that's been in the trenches and understands sort of what it was like to be in their place before they, as they go through the process, and fundraising, simultaneously hiring, simultaneously building a product to scale, like everything you need to do. It's like, you haven't been a founder, it's hard to imagine having been a founder. And although I had operational experience at Minibar, which is great, Laurel really had built a company from scratch. And I think that it really helps the way that she sees things from an operational perspective, and the way that I bring, how does this fit into a portfolio together from a finance perspective. And then we both just love being around people and helping people and meeting new people, and continuing to expand our network. So we have a lot in common, but we also, our skill sets are somewhat different from an operating and a finance perspective.
And can you share a little bit more about, like, how are you guys right now in terms of, like, with everything happening in COVID, how are you uniquely supporting your portfolio companies?
I mean, I think we were heads down without responding. We were trying so hard to just focus on portfolio companies, and then focus on LP correspondence it was very, very stressful. It was stressful for everyone, but It's our first fund, and we wanted to show our LPs and our founders that we really are committed to being there for them, and in being supportive, and honestly any way they needed. So whether that had to do with cash management, reserves, hiring, correcting the product roadmap, thinking about other investors that could be a good fit to participate in a bridge round moving forward before things got really bad. Um, just making sure that all aspects of the business were covered as much as they could be, and then as a silver lining, if there was anything in terms of media that we could present in a light that could possibly be helpful in terms of, for example, one of our telemedicine companies or anything in digital health. Um, we were going to try to leverage some of that through the media connections that we have, but it was just a lot of heads down, and we don't lead, but we want to be as active and as helpful as our founders want us to be. So we did, we helped them with any partnerships, anything that we could be helpful with. We offered and tried, and we still are. We're still keeping, like, helping them. How is the transition to remote going? How's XYZ? There's so many different things, and because we've invested from the pre-seed, a lot of these companies are very, very early and still looking for guidance. So it's been very busy. Very busy.
And can you share a little bit more? Because just said you mentioned before you invested in a company in Nigeria. Is that true? That's it.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So how did that come about? It seems like are there any international like are there any places or countries internationally that you are highlighting, and how and how does that fit into your the thesis of the fund?
Yeah, so interesting because one of the things I respect a lot about Laurel, my partner, is that she took it upon herself to lead an angel round, or whatever you want to call it, in a company in Mexico City that's just helping out SMEs in terms of their loans, because the loan process there is just not what it is here. And just she set a vision for it, and she had the risk appetite to tap into LATAM when nobody really did, about 3 or 4 years ago. So she led a round as an angel investor for this company called Credit Justo, which is now, they just got their last round of funding from Point72 and Goldman Sachs, and then another 100 million revolver from Goldman, and then another 100 million from Credit Suisse in the midst of all of this craziness. So she sort of allowed me to see what it was like to have some exposure to LATAM and originally. And I love David Port, like the CEO. I found investing in LATAM to just be so interesting and different. And there are a lot of funds that actually won't do it. And they're really focused internally, but we can leverage any connections that we have internationally and locally. So we felt that we could be helpful from my connections at Goldman to continue helping. There's a lot of parallels that you can still do, although they're based in Mexico City. So we had that in our portfolio, put together an SPV for our LPs, in addition to a small check from our fund. And we ended up investing in that, and then 2 other companies in LATAM, which we're extremely excited about. I'm more than happy to discuss. But then the latest one in Nigeria is actually it's called, actually, I don't know if I can say what it's called, but it is basically it's a one medical for Africa. And the founders are incredible, just so scrappy and hardworking. And obviously they faced the telecommunications there are a lot harder. I spoke to them right before this, and they're having trouble sort of communicating. Their networks are just not that good. So COVID has definitely impacted them, and healthcare is not their main priority. Like COVID screening is not their first go-to. Like it's more they're interested in investing in fintech and some other areas. So, or like if a baby has a fever spiked in the middle of the night, like that's where they will spend money in terms of healthcare. But COVID testing isn't really what they're interested in. Anyway, there's a lot to be done and a lot to do.
Absolutely. And we got two questions. One is talking about are there any initiatives that Supernode uses to support local economies and related to, kind of related to that investment. And then another one is about, you know, can you comment on portfolio company actions to build resilience, right? Where you just mentioned before about a company being scrappy, right? They're remember stay lean as long as possible, and especially in this time where they need to be resilient and go the test of time. Can you talk a little bit about that conflict?
Honestly, it's hard. It's really hard. We every if you have a VC investor tell you that their portfolio isn't at all damaged from what's going on, then there's just no way. We've It's been a transition in terms of who's critical in terms of hiring. Who do we how do we even remotely transition? How do we transition for the meantime? Like for example, we have a healthcare company that had a hardware piece as sort of it was in the middle of waiting for the NLP to be good enough so that you could so that basically you just eliminated the hardware piece and your phone could to do the transmission. Basically, they had to pivot during COVID and basically just try to not it wasn't their main business model, but they were trying to pick up doctor-patient interaction and do the best they could during COVID. Just although it's not their end mission. It's very hard because you need to balance um, keeping your business afloat and not I think investors are going to understand that growth is stagnant and that the numbers are just definitely not there that they were 4 months ago. That said, it's actually been a very interesting environment because I've been speaking to co-investors nonstop, and no one has really seen valuations come down, especially in the seed stage, which is insane. Like we're
Yep.
all just like, is it just me or is this happening to everyone?
Yep.
Like the YC class is still like 1 on 15, and like we're just not going to do. I mean, that's just doesn't make sense for $100K check. So in terms of like, it's tricky. It's very tricky, but you just have to stay. You have to you just have to honestly just stick to. I would use this time to be heads down on the product and use this time to your advantage as much as you can. Like some people are talking about breaking leases in office spaces. Some people are talking about there's a lot of, depending on what the company is and what the overhead is, there are a lot of ways to reduce costs. I think it's a by case basis, but for the most part, we've been strategizing per company.
Got it. And I want to switch gears a little bit back to like currently what's going on now, and talk a little bit about what can we do, in venture to better support the Black community, whether that be at large or specifically Black entrepreneurs.
Right. Honestly, this can't. I said this word, but this can't be like a trend. So we need to like people need to realize that this is a problem that's real, and from here we need more people like Harlem Capital and other funds that are focusing on underrepresented founders. Like I said, like there investors that are focused on, minority women or whatever it might be. But this is about awareness and access. So if we're, as VCs, if they get to the top of the funnel and they have access to the same resources and network and capital that the rest of them do, there should be no reason why the funding, why they're underfunded at all. And I think that like I was on this women VC thread that they were talking about the Helm. If you go to the helm.co, there's an entire list of like, here's some thought leaders, here's some books, here's some support, here's some donation, here's everything that you need to know without having to actually go to an African woman and African American woman and say, how can I be helpful? And just like educate yourself. And here's like 5 things to do. And I've been sending this link around to everyone that's I've spoken to today. And I will continue to. And that's what I said. It's really about not just saying, but saying and moving forward.
Yep. Yeah, it's like saying moving forward, but also, I mean, the importance of dialogue. Are there? Can you share a little bit more about what does Supernode do anything now, or have any plans to specifically help the Black community in this respect?
So this is, as we always do, these, and I don't know if you can send out a link, but as we always host these breakfast entrepreneurs, for it's called cereal because it's in the morning, but spelled the cereal, but it's for it's for entrepreneurs that are just looking to start companies, meet other interesting people that want the same access to capital and resources and just bounce ideas off of. And Laurel, my partner, hosts those every other Saturday, I want to say, but we always send them out. Anyone's always free to join. It's always an eclectic group of people. And this month we're more focused on African American leaders, but it's always for the past 10 years, it's been a complete mix of all different races, genders, classes.
Great. That's something we can definitely share. So, so I wanted to thank you very much for joining us today, Jenny, and sharing a little bit more about your story, about Supernode, and your perspective on how we can help the Black community, especially during this time. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone watching. This is Rebel One Live. Join us every week at 7 p.m. Eastern from Tuesday to Thursday, and we interview leaders like Jenny that are sharing their wisdom. So thanks again for joining us.